We are now going to look at the vulnerability known as insufficient logging and monitoring. And that is one where we are just talking about not having enough visibility into what our application is doing and how it's doing it, who might be coming in, what they are performing in terms of actions against our system, with what kind of inputs. Basically, all the things that could alert us to an attack or a vulnerability. And so this is seen as a vulnerability in itself because it doesn't let us keep track of our system to a sufficient level. And so Rails, of course, like with a lot of stuff I've been singing the praise of it on and off here. It does give you a decent amount of logging to start with. It's not completely empty, but something like login, I'll show you the problem with the defaults. Here we go. We are going to try and log in, and we're going to not use the right credentials. We're just going to fail it. So what we see in the logs is there's not really a lot of information. There's, we're already filtering out the username and password, so those are not going to show up. They're not going to be there for us in terms of the like attack type of inputs that were used. But another interesting thing is that we don't really see a lot about where the user is coming from, like what the refer they used, and a lot of those kind of things. But what we really care about is having some sort of a additional kind of event, I guess I would say. So let's add that in. Let's add that in. And that will make it clear what I'm talking about. So if we go over to Pages Controller, actually, if we go over to Logins Controller, there we are. Okay, so if there is a failure, let's make sure that before we actually send people over to the redirect, we make another entry into the log. And logger, I believe, is available just by default in Rails. And so what we care about is maybe logger.error. And we're going to pass something to it that says login failure detected. And we're just going to add this kind of a square bracket. There we go. And we're going to add this. And then these are going to be easier for us to find later on in our logs. And then we can add another one like that here during the success portion. And we are going to remove this failure piece from here. Okay, and actually this should be lowercase. There we go. So we have these messages now. And we go back over to our browser and we try something that shouldn't work. And it didn't work. But then if we go over to our terminal output, we should see, yep, now there's these special messages that start showing up. And then here we go. So the beauty of doing this kind of work is that now if we look for domain equals authentication, we'll see that these both show up. And the reason that that's useful is if we're using a log aggregator or some kind of a log-based alarm or alerting system, we could now filter by this tag, by domain, or by domain equals authentication, and we can see what's happening, all the events that are related to it as we go through. And we should add more things to it. We should add the username, we should add the role if there's a role, the requester IP, the timestamp, but this is the basic idea, is we want to have something like this. And that is how we resolve insufficient logging and monitoring.